Hello, my name is Ian Yams and welcome to this video in which we'll be looking at hitting the ground running with our Year 13 students. And considering the impact of this on the students due to the pandemic this year, this is as important as ever. We've always at Alps talked about monitoring point 0 as being a starting point for students and for staff at the beginning of the Year 13, and it could be based on data that has come from a formal assessment. In previous years it may well have been AS results, it may be your centre assessment grades. It's picking a data point that you feel is the most appropriate for your current Year 13s, and it enables staff to see what their subject page would look like based on the students that are going to be teaching between now and the summer in 2021. And this enables staff to really get to know that group of students and to understand any other factors that need to be taken into account. You will find, if you go onto Schools Week, that one of our colleagues, Sue McGregor, wrote an article recently with regards to settling in Year 12s and Year 13s into post-16 learning, and it's certainly worth a good read. And I think where we're coming from at Alps, it's not just about the data, it's about how we can do the best for our students in order to be able to support them and make sure that they make the best progress possible during Year 13. Just a bit of housekeeping in, this is a recorded video. If you've got any questions as a result of the video or any questions more generally about Alps, then please do get in contact with us, either the education team or if it's data query with the data team. And we've also got a number of live webinars and other recordings that you'll find on our website. So coming back to this session then, it's really about setting the expectations and supporting staff and students through this academic year and identifying groups of students that we wish to focus on. And you will find a lot more information on our champions page and on our knowledge base to help you. And really what Alps is about is that positivity, is how we can raise expectations. We appreciate that times are far more difficult in schools and colleges now than they've ever been in the past, but it's really about in these types of times is that we actually are focusing on the students and we're focusing on their needs and really supporting them to make sure that they're actually achieving the best possible outcomes. So if you're not familiar with Alps, we're famous for our thermometer. So red means that you're operating in the top quartile, the top 25% of schools and colleges. Blue means that it's relatively poor, and the bottom quartile, and black means that you're in the middle. So those of you that are familiar with the L3VA, the government performance measures, if you're talking about making average progress, then in Alps terms that would put you about grade 5 on the Alps Thermometer. So we have our strap line here, red is hot, blue is not. And the colour system is one that staff find very easy to get to grips with. Every thermometer in our analysis is unique. So if we look at these three examples here, so if you score 1.0, that means that the students have achieved their minimum expected grades, and we'll talk more about them as we go on. So in terms of geography then, 1.0 would make you an Alps grade 4, but in physics it would make you an Alps grade 2, and in BTEC IT it's a grade 4. So these thermometers are absolutely unique. They're based on national data, so they're based on data that we get from the DFE. So we're comparing any analysis, your school will be compared to that national data set, not just the schools and colleges who are currently using Alps. So our aspiration and where Alps really started was the whole concept that if we create these national benchmarks and if 25% of schools and colleges can produce a particular set of outcomes for students in terms of progress, then really that should be an aim for all of us as our aspiration. And so these minimum expected grades are set at the 75th percentile. So I'm going to cover most of the rest of it using Collect Interactive, and we'll pop back to this PowerPoint towards the end. So I'm just going to drop out of this now. And what we can see here now is some example training data in Collect Interactive. We've got our current Year 13, this is our monitoring point 0. And as I said earlier, you need to decide what is the most appropriate set of data for you to use to create this. Now within this overview, we've got our MPZ, so in our case it's based on some assessments done in March just before lockdown, and we've compared that to previous year's results. So we can see that as sociology department, generally we've got quite good results, top quartile here, but they're actually their assessment in March just before we went into lockdown with these students who are in Year 12 was showing that students are doing quite poorly. Now what you need to do is look back at your historical trends and see whether the sociology department have a history of underestimating or whether there is some genuine concern. Similarly here in literature, their estimations here are quite poor. The results have been quite poor over the previous years. You'll know the context within your own school and you'll know which departments to look for. So while we're on this view, it's just worth showing you that if you click on the show teaching sets, then you get that same view. You will only see teaching sets in historical data if you've used the same notation across the year. So you can see here it's a bit patchy. Most schools, it can change from year to year depending on how they've set up their MIS system or SIMS, whichever you use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go into psychology. And what we can see here is a gender split. So your eye is often caught to the reds and the blacks, but you don't miss out here in terms of the girls are an Alps grade 5s. That means they're making average progress, and the boys are grade 4. So they're doing a little bit better. And again, if we look at the split between our disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged, we can see there was a gap. So just because they're black, it's worth always interrogating a little bit more deeper. You can put your teacher names in if you wish. Not all schools do. Sometimes that can be a little bit too obvious. It may be that we just stick with our teaching sets, which we would advise. Interestingly, we can see here that our two teaching sets perform quite differently, but they're actually being taught by the same member of staff. So I'm going to go into this particular teaching set, and if we look at students, so what we're now seeing then, obviously yours will have the students' names. We've got their prior attainment, their average GCSE score, the minimum expected grade, which is based on that average GCSE score, and these students were given personalised targets during year 12. And the idea of the personalised targets is where members of staff, having taught the students for a little bit in year 12, begin to say, well, although the Alps minimum expected grade might be a BC, actually I think that a personalised target for you, a B, would be more appropriate. In this case here, they decided the students it was a C, where there was a split grade. These grades here are the assessment grades that were put into our MIS back in March when the students were in year 12. You can see that we can define grades. You can use whichever notation you wish. So we've used a plus meaning that that's a high D, a minus meaning that's a low C, and an equal sign there means it's a middle C. And if you go onto the Find Grades tab, you can see we've used the definition of stretch, secure, and at risk. But the symbols themselves, you can choose whatever you wish them to mean. And what you can do on here then is you can drag these and see what proportion of students would need to go up to a grade in order. So there we can see if 11 students improved by 1 grade, this is 11 students who have got the plus notation. This would move us for this group of students to an Alps grade 4. So I'll come back to students then. So if we sort by personalised target, then it begins to give us a feel for reassessing the assessment that we had for these students. So if I turn on the what if, then we can look at these students here and we can see that we had 2 students one student in the top band here with an A and A star, and we decided their personalised target for this one was an A star. In the latest assessments, we weren't convinced that they were working at that level, and it was more like a B. This student here, again, personalised target, we made an A star, was doing much better. So if I'm thinking about my starting point, this is the data that we've decided as a school that we want to use, and this will give me an Alps grade 5. If I drag up that thermometer, then I can see that on average 6 students will need to improve by a grade if I wanted to be a grade 4. Okay, and if I wanted to be a grade 3, then it would need 10. So that's 40% of the cohort. That's quite a big step to get from here to here. So what I would be thinking about is, what do I want to do between this starting point at the beginning of year 13? This is the group of students that I'm now responsible for. I may not have taught them all last year when I was in year 12, but this is the group now that are mine and that I'm going to look after and I'm going to nurture, cajole and support to get through to get the best possible results that we can. And so if I start thinking about, well, where do I want to be by the time we get to Christmas or October monitoring point? So I can start to look at these and think, well, actually, This student here I am more confident now that they're going to get an A, and that's what I'm going to be working towards with that student. I've got a group here with personalised targets of Bs. In those assessments were not so strong, but actually I'm going to focus on them, and I'm going to try and get some C's out of some of these. If I look down here, again, I think that student could be a C. And what you're seeing here now then, let's take that one up as well, is that they're the students that will get me now to an Alps grade 4. And that might be the starting point for my focus at the beginning of year 12 on that group of students. It may be that we go back and we update some of these personalised targets and review that as part of the process during this start of this part of the academic year. Now, the other thing that we've set up in this training data is that you can have various groups of students. So within the Alps terms, there's gender, ethnicity, disadvantage, student performance. That's a key stage 4 measure. But you'll notice here that we've got a C19 home learning. So what we've done in this example data set is each student's been given a rating of either great, average or poor in terms of how well they engage with their home learning. So if I apply that, no great surprise that those who are really engaged have come out with a higher score, and that those who are less engaged have come out with a lower score. So if this is looking at all the students overall, so if I just scrunch that up, we can now see the students that were tagged as average, those that was great, and those that was poor. Interestingly, those students who didn't engage, I mean, some of them are not that far off of their targets. There's others that are quite a bit lower down here. And so it's a question now of what strategies are we going to use to support those youngsters going forward. And you can apply, as a data manager in our school, any of these sort of sets of definitions that you wish. It's always worth looking at the outcomes tab as well. I'm just going to simplify the view, which just gives us the second part of the calculation. So that's all 24 students in the group. These are the 13 that was working average. Okay, so we can see here the difference between sort of 0.99 grade 4, the 4 students who were really well engaged with their home learning, and those that was less engaged. But as always, it's about coming back to looking at students as individuals and really understanding what's going on with those. If we look at a student, then we can also see the personalised targets in the other subjects, and we can also see the grades that were given in those subjects. So I'm going to come back to this student view a bit later on. It also shows us what GCSEs they did and what their targets were there as well. So I'm just going to reset that now. If we go back to all of psychology, rather than just the teaching set, what we can do is, if we do an analysis, we can save them. So I'm just going to go back in and think about this more then from a departmental point of view. I can rank the students by prior attainment, or any of these grades if you wish. And then we've got this opportunity to apply ad hoc. So what I showed you before was tagging that had been done by the data manager. But this is something that I may do as a head of department or with my teaching set. And when I've got particular students where I feel that I want to focus intervention on, so here's one here, then I can put them into a different coloured group. Okay, so there's another one down here, and this one here, and there may be different reasons for that intervention group, but clearly we can see that the youngsters that I'm picking out, if we look at how they're performing overall, it's much lower than the rest of the group. So again, if I go into the outcomes tab, we can see, so across my 2 teaching sets, okay, there's my 46 students, an Alps score of 0.98 to grade 4. Here's the students without the 42 that are not in my special group, and here are 4 students that I want to focus on. And then again, I can do a what if on that if I wish to. And you can do it in this view in terms of if I come down to those 4 students, I can actually look at moving those 3, some C's into B's. You can do at that level, or more so if you go back to the students. That's going to tell me now that I've made a change there, not at student level, so I have to go back to the original data in this case. But you get the idea of how you can then do that what if on here to identify those youngsters. And if I just scrunch that up again, it's just easier to see. They're the orange students and they're the green students I want to focus on. So these are the ones that I may be trying to get some B's out of. And we can see the impact over here on this side. As an example then, I'm just going to reset everything and go back to here. So what I did earlier is I identified different students. So here we can see the students, the green ones are the ones that needed intervention, and the purple ones are the ones that were exceeding. And obviously that's playing out what we're seeing on the thermometer. So you can save these ad hocs and then come back to them. When you start looking at trends in data, looking at this year's students against past results has got its place, but we can also look at the students and how they performed when they was in year 12. Now you'll notice that I've actually flipped back to the MPZ for last year's year 13s because their year 12 data was a little bit more robust. Obviously this year, our current year 13s, we've all got less data because once we got to March, we got into lockdown. And this is quite interesting here because what we can see here was there was a formal assessments in January in the A-levels but not in the B-Techs, and that's quite common. But at the same time, it may be worth thinking about, if that's a data collection point, getting some assessment summary for those students at that point. Again, we can see the trends. So as I mentioned earlier, sociology, you've got a bit of a reputation for under-predicting the outcomes for those students. But if we look at government and politics, again, that one's quite low, but can come on to students. And I go into this student here, then we can see then the trends. And this grey difference here, this column, is comparing MPZ to March. I can change that to different data points and you can see the grey difference. So this is really powerful. Everything that I'm showing you works equally well with year 11. Clearly they have a lot more subjects in this view, but it does enable you to see the trends, and they are different personalised targets. This student's megs was a C, but psychology and government politics thought that the student really should have a personalised target of a B, and we can begin to do those comparisons. You can export to Excel this view if you wish, and similarly on your subject pages you can export to a PDF, and if you'd set up any of the comparisons, then they will come through on there as well for you. So if we go back to our home page, the data I've been showing you has all been based around the subject analysis. There is a student analysis as well. So again, we're looking at our MPZ. Okay. And we can look at them in terms of tutor groups. So here's 21 students here in this particular tutor group. And one of the built-in comparison is these student performance groups. So I can apply that. And then I may be interested in who's below targeting in 2 subjects or more. So in this case, it's 1 student. Okay. And we can see that the economics, the personalised target was a B, the MEG was a BC, and they're currently on a C, so that's the lower half of them. But they're a D and an E in these 2 subjects. So as a personal tutor, that enables me to begin to get that horizontal view and understanding of where the students are. Equally, as a tutor, I can pick out those above target in all subjects, and we can send the postcards home and celebrate them successes. So I can view all students back to here. And I've now got the list of the whole year group, and clearly the same filters there to apply. Again, you can export this to Excel if there's any other columns that you wish to add on to it. The other filter that we've got set up in here is high need. So again, if we're thinking about how we're going to support the students and identifying them, it's important that staff understand any sort of categories that you're using for students. So I can look at the category 3 students, so that's across the whole year group. I can do that via a tutor group. Or equally, if I go into a subject, then I would again, so it's carried that comparison through, I would be able to see which students are falling into the SEND category, category 2, category 3. You can name these whichever you want. So within Connect Interactive then, what I focused on for the purpose of this video was the subject analysis and the student analysis. There is a monitoring accuracy tool, strategic analysis, which you'll be able to find out more about in other videos. In terms of MPZ, at this point, they're of less use for this particular data. So coming back to the PowerPoint, there's lots of resources. So Alps is much more than just providing you with excellent data analysis tools. It's actually providing you lots of resources as well. So on your home page, okay, do focus down here. Everybody can see these, and there's various user guides, the knowledge base, there's Alps Champions resources as well for you to have a look at. And when we start thinking about where does MPZ fit in the whole cycle, then there's lots of materials to support you in terms of thinking through where you want to be. So we sort of passed the results day bit and priorities. I mean, clearly this year, using the centre assessed grades, there's not going to be any surprises. So we're now really thinking about how we target setting for students. There is a parallel video that looks at year 12 and setting MEGs, recognising that in some instances some staff may feel that the average GCSE score for this year's year 12 may be a bit high. It's very difficult to know to what extent that will have an influence, and if the students have come through your own school, then clearly you will know what the process was in terms of arriving at those grades. But it is about thinking now about what we're going to collect in the autumn term. Are we going to have some sort of formal assessment for year 13s as a way of trying to reset where we are, that would then get added that information to support our starting point at MPZ, and then how we're going to adjust during the spring term and the summer term. So I think you're starting to plan this. How it's going to be different will very much depend on school to school and what was happening during the lockdown and the home learning. Alps doesn't give you any answers, unfortunately, but it does help you to ask the right questions. So it will shine the light for you on your data in lots of different directions, and hopefully we can identify the students that are going to need the most support and care as we go through this academic year, and again to make sure that they're confident in their own settling back into learning and getting the outcomes at the end of year 13 that they truly deserve. So there are lots more resources on the website for you to have a look at. So just to finish off then, thanks very much for watching this video. How we start the year with year 13 is so important for those youngsters. They are going to come into school having quite different experiences in terms of home learning. Some will be very anxious, some will be quite excited to be back, some will be disappointed in terms of the experiences that they've had and have missed out on over the last 6 months. But from a teacher's point of view, it's really creating the MPZ data point says, these are the set of students that I'm going to be teaching, that I'm going to be working with over the next academic year, that I want to support and get the very best out of them up until the exams this summer. And the more information that I've got, and the more I can focus on individuals and groups of students, and an intervention group that I decide on between now and October half term may be different to a group of students between October half term and Christmas, and again another set in the new year. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into how Alps Connect Interactive can help you. And as I say, if you do have any questions, then please feel free to get in touch with us at the office. Thank you very much.